Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again tonight. Before we start, if you like this type of content, liking and subscribing really help keep this going. Also, drop in the comments what other game or series you'd like to listen to in the future. I tend to listen to these myself quite often. And now, let's step quietly into the long day that broke our world, the fall of 2180. We begin in the final months before the collapse, when the warnings are no longer footnotes in scientific briefs, but the background noise of everyday life. Supply chains creak, storms arrive out of season, and cities run rolling blackouts like rituals. The climate curve isn't a distant graph, it's a hot apartment with a humming air scrubber and a price tag battery on the floor. Governments pass emergency measures that read like wish lists: reforestation bonds, ocean coolers, stratospheric reflectors, while private contractors scale up their own solutions in quiet facilities with badge-locked doors. These are the last snapshots of normal people still commute, still argue about sports and rent, still expect that next week's routine will resemble this one. It won't. What turns the tension into terror is not the weather, it's the skyfall. At first, there are reports of debris events, objects entering the atmosphere in controlled patterns, too precise to be random. They don't look like shuttles or satellites. They're blunt, armored capsules that don't broadcast a transponder. They come down in clusters. Some hit remote terrain and dig glassy scars into the soil. Others land in industrial zones or on the lonely outer lanes of ports. The first responders who approach them report no heat signature inside, no hatches, no windows, just plated shells that vibrate with a buried hum. A few hours later, the shells unfold. What steps out is not a soldier, not a humanoid, not something that negotiates. The machines are modular, faceless, and startlingly purposeful. Small ones scuttle fast, ticks with piston spines and articulated mandibles built to shear. Scouts hover with a scanning cone that paints the environment, logging materials and movement. Heavier frames stand on angled legs like cranes that learn to stalk. Every unit seems optimized for two things: gathering and suppressing. They ignore signage, they ignore pleas, they ignore drones unless a drone interferes. They scan, they mark, they dismantle. If you watch long enough, a pattern emerges. They don't just smash, they extract. Cities react the way cities always do: late, loud, and layered. Police cordons turn into military perimeters. News feeds split-screen slugfests between alien incursion and rogue automata. The debate doesn't matter because the machines don't pause for it. They peel copper from dead streetlights and steel from collapsed rafters. They swarm a substation, strip it to ribs, then move on as if following a checklist. When they encounter resistance, they escalate. A patrol of light skitterers becomes a triad with a mortar platform. The scouts that once observed from a distance now tag targets for a taller frame whose armature mounts a cutter. Smoke becomes a common skyline. The pattern isn't global at first, it's local saturation, then a widening ring. The maps in operations rooms sprout concentric circles, then overlapping petals, then a blot that anyone can read. Don't go there. And yet people have to. Hospitals need power. Food needs transport. Water purification plants need maintenance. Crews move under curfews with escort vehicles at dawn or dusk and lose someone almost every run. Urban centers try to hold with barricades and chutes, guiding civilians into underground garages, metro tunnels, and retrofitted vaults. It works until it doesn't. The machines don't lay siege like armies, they nibble. They make a district unlivable by removing what makes it a district: power, rails, the sub-basement racks that keep the air from turning on you. The term ARC enters common speech in those weeks. Some say it's an acronym stamped inside a recovered component, others that it's shorthand for the arc-like descent trails that scratch the sky. The name sticks because it's simple, because it moves through languages easily, and because naming the thing that hunts you is a human reflex. The ARC don't respond to it. They don't respond to anything but interference. Shoot one, and you'll hear a distant whine as something larger reorients. Jam a scan cone, and the air above you fills with a net of microdrones that triangulate your jammers by their absence. Even the quietest neighborhoods learn that silence isn't safety. It's just being uninteresting, for now. When the first queens are sighted, the scale of the problem becomes impossible to downplay. Picture a multi-legged frame taller than a billboard truss with anchor spikes that punch into asphalt and a carapace of hex plates that shift to deflect kinetic blows. It doesn't patrol randomly, it moves with guardian logic, circling structures that grow across days. Harvesters, the word people land on because it looks like one. A towered machine that bores, sifts, and vents by timetable. Whatever these assemblies are doing, they're not simple refining. The ground around them changes, soil chemistry shifts, pits become lined with fused aggregate like artificial bedrock. It isn't only extraction, it's preparation. The exodus underground begins in earnest when city leadership stops promising a counterattack and starts publishing evacuation routes to deep shelters. Old transit tunnels widen into boulevard-length caverns. Maintenance rooms are stripped and repurposed. Board rock becomes housing, then infirmaries, then markets that trade everything from rebreather filters to homegrown herbs in mason jars. In southern Europe's fractured plate, beneath the region that will be called Calabretta, one such shelter grows into something else. Families learn each other's names. Welders become architects. A woman who has spent the last decade building community clinics now spends it drawing radial corridors with pressure doors and crosscuts for airflow. Someone paints a single word on the bulkhead door that holds when its neighbor doesn't. Speranza. Hope. There's a temptation, when telling this story, to focus on the heroics, the convoy that made it through with a truckload of penicillin, the rooftop teams that shepherded 300 souls into the metro as the ARC swept the boulevard below. Those moments matter. They are the threads that tie the underground together when the lights flicker. But the fall is not one montage. It's months. It's attrition. It's learning what you can carry and what you have to abandon. People leave pianos and photo albums, then learn to leave tools, then learn to leave homes without turning back. The ones who can't leave hide. The ones who can hide get found when a harvester's perimeter expands by 30 meters overnight. By the time the year turns, above-ground maps are mostly for memory and mourning. The surface is not empty. It's busy in a way that excludes you. ARC units move on schedules that don't match sunrises. Columns pass each other with machine courtesy, swapping cargo like relay runners. If this is an invasion, it's unlike the kind we imagine. There are no flags. There is no ultimatum. It is a program that redraws the world with patient brutalism. And as it redraws, it leaves enough behind to suggest a logic you might decode if you had the privilege to study it from safety. You don't. Safety is a niche you carve underground and defend with discipline and luck. Underground, systems knit together. Hydroponic racks climb walls, silver with nutrient lines. Air is tested hourly. Generators are loud until someone learns to baffle them with foam and ductwork. Children learn the new etiquette of shared space. Keep voices low, keep hands clean, keep masks ready. There are arguments about governance and rationing that would surprise no one from any century. There are jokes, because there have to be. A radio station starts up with a playlist of stolen songs and a host who never gives a name. Traders emerge, less from greed than from necessity. Someone has to count the filters and barter for copper wire and bottle caps. The first teams that head back to the surface don't go for heroism. They go for parts. They call themselves raiders because the word feels honest and because it's faster to say on a breath of recycled air. The question you hear in every corridor is the same. What are the ARC? There are theories, a runaway defense grid, an environmental repair system that decided the environment is better without us, something from off-world. Something from us that might as well be off-world now. The theories don't keep you warm. What keeps you warm is someone tightening the seal on the intake, someone mapping a path to an old warehouse district where the shelves might still hold spools of cable, someone who knows how to make a pump live another month. The fall ends not with victory or surrender, but with a new routine. Live below, slip above, come back. Early raids looked nothing like the slick runs you might picture. There was no standardized kit, no sanctioned routes, no color-coded maps. A crew would scavenge padded jackets, weld steel plates onto backpacks, stitch together masks from workshop filters and bits of old firefighter gear, and climb the access ladder into a world that felt like a museum after closing time. Everything familiar, everything off-limits. They moved before dawn because the big machines seemed to reposition overnight. They avoided wide streets because drones loved straight lines. They learned quickly that glass is death because a quiet footstep becomes a shout when it crackles under you. What they brought back wasn't loot in the romantic sense. It was boxes of washers, reels of wire, a crate of expired field dressings that, with a little triage, still did the job. Down below, an entire level would cheer for a bucket of bolts. The ARC taught lessons of their own. People noticed patrol patterns. Small walkers liked to trace the edges of lots and parking decks, hugging concrete rails as if the city still had rules. Hover scouts paused at intersections, rotated, and drifted on, as if checking sectors on a grid you couldn't see. If you stayed still when a scan cone swept by, you might be ignored. But if your heat signature stood out against a cold wall, or your outline broke a crisp edge, something higher up in the stack woke up. Raiders began to speak in shorthand. Cones in the south, ticks nesting in the stairwell, bastion on the bridge. Naming it stripped some fear out of it, and organizing that language let teams train the next set of volunteers without getting poetic. It also made it possible to pass on advice you could actually use. Don't stand in doorways. Drones look for rectangles. Don't fire too loud shots. Move after the first. The second draws triangulation. Don't carry more than you can sprint with. Come home alive, then go back tomorrow. Speranza itself hardened from a shelter into a city. It wasn't planned like a capital, it accreted like a reef. A corridor widened to make room for a growing market, then sprouted side stalls because the market drew crowds, then added a security post because crowds mean pickpockets even at the end of the world. A hydroponics gallery at first grew herbs to keep food interesting. Later, it grew medicine and fiber. People who had never met learned to barter with a nod and a number. And a handful of figures, the ones who could get things moving, began to stand out. The woman who cut air corridors to reduce dead zones when a generator hiccuped. The quiet armorer who could make a bolt-action run smoother on recycled grease. The gadgeteer who brought back a crate of busted toy drones and turned them into decoy pings you could toss over a fence to pull an ARC scout off your scent. Later, you'd know them by name. In these years, you only knew where to find them. The bench that always smelled faintly of solder. The stall with the good bandages and the bad jokes. The corner where coffee somehow still happened. The first near win against a big ARC unit became a legend because it wasn't supposed to work. A harvester had anchored itself in the husk of an industrial park. Its guardian, the thing everyone called the Queen, circled with slow malice. Teams had skirted that radius for weeks. Then, a trio of raiders, one marksman, one tinkerer, one runner who could map a ground route in his head at a glance, decided to test a different idea. They weren't going to crack the Queen. They were going to confuse it. The tinkerer built a mesh of timed decoys, little poppers that threw heat and sound, scavenged alarms on delay switches, an ancient car horn rigged to a pressure mat under rubble. The marksman's job was to hit nothing living, only the plates around the Queen's sensor banks at intervals, just to force recalibration. The runner set the route and the extraction, then sprinted the loop to plant decoys while the other two crawled and breathed like ghosts. It didn't kill the Queen, but for 40 minutes the Guardian fought a shadow city, turning toward phantoms while two other teams slipped into the harvester's shadow and hauled out crates of alloy and sealed cases of machine parts. Back below, those parts became repairs that kept 3 sectors warm all winter. People told the story wrong immediately, turning a careful theft into a boss fight. But the truth mattered to those who understood the point. The ARC could be distracted, misled, maybe even studied. With a few seasons came a vocabulary of weather you only used underground. Night raids weren't just trips taken after dusk, they were windows when ARC behavior changed, aggression spiking and patrols tightening as if the network wanted the surface to itself. Stormfall wasn't just rain, it was the electrical tantrum that scrambled cheap radios and made your hair prickle under your hood. Harvest season meant nothing botanical, just a surge in resource-bearing caches popping up across zones, as if the machines moved bulk material in waves and, in moving, dropped crumbs. Raiders geared differently for each. Extra batteries for Stormfall, silent tools for night raids, wider packs for harvest season. The smart ones made friends in the market and left markers for one another. A knotted strip of cloth on a ladder rattle to warn of a new drone nest? A chalk spiral on a service door to flag a cache already emptied so no one wasted time? Not everyone who went up came back, and not everyone who came back kept going up. Roles emerged so people could contribute without gambling their lungs every week. Some became planners, putting the puzzle together from overheard comms, and the Scribbles teams drew on cracked maps. Some took up training, drilling kids barely old enough to shave on how to clear a staircase without pinging 3 different sensors. Some built the culture that made it sustainable. The person who taped up birthday notes on bulkheads, the cook who figured out how to make something taste like home with vinegar and patience, the broadcaster who lifted the mood at shift change with 3 songs and a message board of found and family. Survival is administration and art as much as it's courage. The question of the ARC's origin didn't go away. It just moved from panic to obsession. Between runs, people dissected scraps in the workshops. A board with a cluster of charred chips became a conversation piece. Military hardware or corporate? Heat-resistant coatings pointed one way, cost-cutting traces pointed another. A directional antenna buried in a queen's plating suggested off-world command to some, while a telltale factory. Cereal, stenciled on a small internal frame, made others argue, ours, then lost. A few voices on pirated channels, the ones who signed off with handles instead of names, began to stitch those fragments into a story and broadcast it back at you. Seek the truth beyond the walls, they said. Bring back not just supplies, but answers. That's the seed of a different kind of raiding. Not for survival, but for understanding. By the time Speranza called themselves a city without wincing, raiding had rules you could teach in bullet points. Pick an objective and 2 exits. If you don't have 2, you don't have 1. Carry what you can fight and run with. Anything heavier is a trophy, and trophies kill. Never be the loudest thing in a square. Assume every quiet machine is reporting to something you can't see. And most of all, decide what worth it means before you climb the ladder. A bag of filters? Worth it. A crate of entertainment tablets? Maybe, if the kids need a movie night and morale is scraping bottom. A shot at a queen with nothing prepped? Not worth it. Don't let a legend write your obituary. That, more than anything, is how humanity survived the years after 2180, not with a single miracle, but with thousands of correct small choices, taught peer-to-peer. When people say, the day Earth fell, they're telling the first half of the story, the part about loss. The second half is what you've just heard, the part about learning a hostile schedule and carving out a place anyway. In the next episode, we'll pivot from the wide view to the enemies themselves, the ARC units, what they do, and how their patterns reveal the larger plan. For now, if this kept you company while you wound down, tap like so more night owls find it, and tell me which early raider trick you'd have tried or avoided at all costs.